go ahead and get started with the May 2022 ELPCO meeting, a hybrid meeting, our second one. I'm Jason Stevenson, co-chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization, otherwise known as ELPCO. We're the community council for this area, really stretching from Liberty Park to East High School. Our northern boundary is 8th South, our southern boundary is 17th South, and we go from 700 East to 13th East, including the 9th and 9th Business District, which is probably the most popular aspect of what ELPCO contains. We've got a great meeting. This is our second to last meeting of the first half of 2022. We'll have one more meeting in June, probably on June 30th, which is actually the 5th Thursday. Normally we meet on the 4th Thursday. We also have a pretty active Facebook group and a newsletter that goes out twice a month with a lot of local information. So if you don't have that or sign up for that, go to our Facebook page or look around on our agenda and you'll be able to sign up for that newsletter. Want to thank some of our board members who are in attendance, mostly online, as well as a couple of folks that are here in attendance. And we will get started with Salt Lake City Fire Department, station number 5.
Hey everyone, here and on Zoom. I'm Tori, and like he said, I work down the street, station 5. We are the heavy rescue team for Salt Lake City. There's actually 8 of us there, and we've started to see an uptick in foothills rescues, people getting injured, having medical emergencies. So be safe out there. But if you're not, we're here to help you. Some things that might be worth mentioning that you can all be interested in is we just finished our written testing process for new hires. So if you have anyone interested in working with us, they'll have to wait a couple months, we'll have a list out and start hiring off of that. Another big improvement that the city's been working on, that the department's been working on for a while, is our chat team, community health access team. So we have a couple of social workers that we're working with that work for us, with us. They're responding to those that are experiencing homelessness and anyone else that's in crisis mode. So we can hopefully, the idea is get them in a better situation faster. So those are some of the big, exciting changes with the fire department right now.
Speak up just a little bit.
Okay, do you want me to start over? The chat team, we do have individuals that get people off the streets and get them the help that they need. So other than that, business as usual, you have an emergency, we show up and we are doing our best to respond professionally and give you the best care that we can. Any questions for me? Or
can you describe what a heavy rescue truck is?
So a heavy rescue is, we're trained for high angle, low angle rope rescues, confined space rescues, extrication from either machinery or difficult vehicle collisions that the rest of the department isn't trained for or doesn't have the equipment for. So we have a 3rd truck at our station that's fully equipped so we can help respond to hopefully any emergency that you may have. So again, rope rescues, trench collapse is another one, confined space. So we had, we've got a call.
Okay.
I'd love to tell you more about it, but come by the station, we can talk more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We know that sometimes happens. They get the radio call and they've got to head out. That's what we appreciate about our public servants, Salt Lake City Fire. Now we're going to move on to Salt Lake City Police Department, Detective Fallows. He's online. I'm going to pin him and then we're going to do the ELPCO April 2022 crime report. Okay. Detective Fallows, are you there?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I will try to speak loudly and I won't get called away. So that's why the police are better, because we don't just leave you guys hanging. So just kidding. All righty. Jason, you want to put up the stats there for me? We'll just delve into those right away. So every month I go over your guys's generally about the top 5. ELPCO is the only one that has all these different types of stats. So that's pretty good for your guys' community council area. That's awesome that Jason takes the time to do that for you. So your top call for service in the month of April was suspicious activity. I look at that as more of a positive because that's generally our citizens calling in saying, hey, there's something not right here. Can you guys come check it out? And we like those types of calls because we're able to, number one, basically provide an extra patrol in your neighborhood when you call us. And then number two, I mean, not a lot of times, but sometimes those types of calls turn into arresting burglary suspects or vehicle burglary suspects, things like that. So I look at that as a positive number. So let's keep that going because that's awesome. The second one is assaults at 6 for the month. We're up a little bit from last year. I think just as it gets warmer, we're going to probably see that number go up a little bit more. Not a ton you can do to prevent it, but obviously each of us has a responsibility to kind of try and maintain ourselves when, so it could be anything from like family assaults to, well, that one's probably not family assaults, but anything from like just simple assaults to people just getting in fights. So, but the second stat is another one to look at, the vehicle prowls. That is half of what it was last year, and that's awesome. I think this is the only community council that I'm going to that their vehicle prowls are actually down. So that's really good. You guys are doing a great job at it. Hopefully just like we've talked about before, if you've been to this meeting before, just make sure you're taking out all of your belongings out of your vehicle at night, locking the vehicle up, turn your lights on. If you can, park your vehicle in a garage. All those things help to mitigate vehicle prowls or vehicle burglaries. And then kind of across the city, I think we're seeing accidents, both reportable and non-reportable. So non-reportable essentially is just an accident where it's kind of a little fender bender, not too bad. People just exchange info or sometimes call us. A reportable accident would be something that's over, I believe it's $2,500 of damage now, which is pretty much most accidents these days with the newer vehicles. So for the month of April, we had 6 of each of those. And then underneath it is another one to look at, hit and runs. I always tell people, if you get in an accident, first thing you should try and do is just snap a quick pic of the plate of the vehicle and try and get a picture. I mean, if you can, if it's feasible and not dangerous, like try and get a picture of the driver. That way, if they do take off, then you can, or if you're getting that vibe, like, man, they're going to take off of me, just grab a quick pic of the vehicle, the plate and the driver if you can, because that helps us in our investigations. And if it's not safe, then don't do it. But if it is, then go ahead and try and do that. So go ahead and go to that first slide, Jason.
There you go.
Perfect. So kind of as we talked about, the car prowls are down. Again, that's awesome. Just, I mean, I'm not 100% sure why, but it seems like across the city they're up. So y'all are doing something right here in ELPCO. That's awesome. We kind of talked about the accidents. Again, just, I think as it gets warmer, there's going to be more people out. There's going to be more vehicles on the road. Let's just try and all just drive as safely as we possibly can. And again, the suspicious activity, in my opinion, that's a good number. That's a positive number. So keep calling us when you think something is suspicious. That helps. We can't always respond right away, but either way, it's going to be an extra patrol in your neighborhood when you call us. And we don't look at it as a nuisance. We like those calls. So this is probably, again, ELPCO is probably one of the highest for suspicious activity community councils too, which again, in my opinion, is a positive thing because that means that people are calling generally about suspicious things. So the other 2 graphs, you can put them up there, Jason, but I'd like to open up, see if anybody has any questions or if anybody would like to ask me anything while I'm here so that I can try and answer your questions. Oh, and I wanted to cover one quick thing too. The SLC mobile app, if you guys could download that from the App Store, that is a huge help to the city and to the department. It helps drive our resources. So if there's like an illegal camp, or there's like tents up in the park, or I think there's lots of different things you can report on there, like speeding. I think there's like drug tips. There's a bunch of different things you can do with that app, and it all drives the resources we have as the police department. So if everybody could take a moment when they get a chance and download that, create a little account, that's super helpful for us as a police department and for the city as well. Because another thing is it helps us, like if there is someone experiencing homelessness and you submit it, we can start getting resources to that person to try and get them some housing or get them into shelter or get them, you know, food or whatever they may need. So it's a positive thing kind of all the way around. So any questions for me?
Any questions for Detective Fallows from our online world or here in the room? You can put up that last chart as well, Detective Fallows, which is really looking at the past, I think, what, 14 months of data of the top 5. It's very curious that car prowls are down because that's what we hear about so much on social media and things like that. Do you think that's just people don't report them, or do you think that's just a wave that we're in a low wave at this moment in ELPCO?
I don't know. Like I said, everywhere else it's up. So you would think like just naturally it should be up here too. But if you are kind of hesitant to like report it and you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to wait around all day for an officer to call me or to come by, you guys can utilize our online reporting with something like a vehicle burglary or a car prowl. You can utilize our online reporting. I put a link to that in the chat as well. And it's super simple to use. It takes, I think, maybe 5-10 minutes to do a report. It's really simple. You get a case number right away. And those reports go directly to our detective queue to be reviewed. So when I write a report, it goes to my sergeant, he approves it, then it goes to our records division, they transcribe it, then it gets in the queue, then it gets assigned to a detective, and then they look at it. So I mean, and that's good for like big calls, you know, like aggravated assaults or, you know, burglaries, things that are super serious. But just for something like, oh man, someone broke into my car and I'm missing, you know, my wallet and there's no suspect info, I just need to get a report done. That helps me to be able to look at the stats and go, hey, we need to start having our bike units go hit this area more often, or we need to, you know, have some patrol officers do some extra patrols in this area more often. So if it's not getting reported, yeah, try and report it because that helps. And the online reporting is pretty much the easiest way to do that. So.
Any questions for Detective Fallows? Yes, Chris.
Do they ever look at Nextdoor or any of those? Is that part of the police?
Sure. Let me repeat that. So Chris asked whether or not you as the Salt Lake City Police Department ever look at Nextdoor.com, which is a kind of a social media information sharing page, or are there some limits about what law enforcement can do on that page?
So I'm not super aware of like limits, but I can say that I don't know of any that actively monitor Nextdoor. You got to be careful with Nextdoor because it's, I mean, it is a community and people are like, hey, this is happening, and that's good. But I mean, it doesn't do any good to put on Nextdoor. That does nothing. Like you have to report it to the police for us to be able to do anything with it. So even if we were to monitor Nextdoor, it still wouldn't change anything. Like we would need physical stats that I can go back to my department, to my bosses and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. Here's the case,
okay.
back it up.
Thank you.
So.
Gotcha. And you know, the one thing that I would just highlight is, and this kind of has actually been in the news a lot, is that traffic accidents make up about half of what our top reported incidents are in ELPCO. It's not something that we think about as involving law enforcement, but it actually is something that really does affect people in the community and the resources of the police department. So with the, you know, some of the initiatives that the Salt Lake City Council and others are pushing to kind of reduce speeds, something to kind of look at is like how much of law enforcement is spent working on traffic accidents. I imagine that can be time consuming, right, Detective Fallows? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And we do have a couple of traffic units that is their specialties. That's what they do. But obviously they're like a citywide thing. So, you know, they're going to be on one accident and 4 or 5 others will come out within an hour, you know. So it's definitely, that's 100% correct. It definitely ties up resources and can be time consuming.
Well, I put in the chat, the link to download the crime report. And so
awesome.
That way we can, you know, you can check that out if you would want to. So we were trying to do the 11th East Reconstruction during our April meeting. We had too much going on. We appreciate that Lynn Jacobs, his team from Salt Lake City Transportation, was able to come back here in May and give us a full rundown of what's going to happen to this really important street that really connects a lot of neighborhoods, specifically 9th and 9th and Sugar House. So we're appreciative that Lynn is able to come back. Then we've got a little X right here you can stand on. I promise no anvils will fall on you.
No pianos.
Stand there, no pianos. I'll get the presentation ready to go when you're ready.
Okay, and I'm good. Looks great. Go ahead and bring up that presentation and appreciate everyone's time tonight and willingness to hear about this and interest in the project. We're excited about it. I've been at the city for about 2.5 years. I think this may be my first in-person community council meeting. So bear with me, I'm a little rusty, but we'll do our best.
Should I go ahead and get that loaded up?
Yeah, go ahead and get that started. Start on that first page. So this is our 11th East project. And you know, honestly, this project is huge. We actually start all the way at I-80 on Highland Drive and go all the way to the roundabout where the whale is, the infamous whale. And so it's the entire stretch of Highland Drive on 11th East. We decided that was too much to do with one project. So we actually broke it into 2 pieces. And we have one entire team working on one of those pieces. And then we're working on the other piece. And that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight, is that northern section of that project. So the area we're talking about tonight is essentially from Logan Avenue, which is just north of 1700, all the way up to the roundabout. So your neighborhood is what we're here about tonight. Are you sharing that?
I can. I'm sorry. I just
go
put
for
you
it.
on there because you were talking. So
You're good.
So there we are.
Nobody wants to see me, so you're
Go to
good.
the first slide.
Yeah, go ahead to the next slide. So just a couple of things about this project, why we're doing it. The primary reason, this is part of our Funding Our Future bond. And the reason we have that bond is to replace aging pavement in the city. We have a lot of pavement in the city that's in really bad shape. And this street definitely qualifies as being in bad shape, as many of you can attest to. And so really the primary reason we're out here is that the pavement's shot and we need to replace it. And so we'll be doing a partial depth reconstruction where we take off the top layer of the roadway and completely rebuild it. As part of that, we'll also be looking at your curb and gutter, and anywhere that's broken or heaved or not draining properly, we'll be reconstructing all that as well with this project. So secondary objective, whenever we make a major investment in a roadway like this, it gives us an opportunity to take a time out and say, how is the road being used? What do all of our master plans say? What does the community say? What can we do to make this roadway function better for everyone who's trying to use it? And so we have to, look at a roadway like this and try to balance all the competing interests and see what we can come up with to make it work better. So where we're at right now, our concept design is basically complete. We know what our concept is, what we're going to try to build. We have a lot of details yet to work through. We got to work through individual drainage issues. We got to work through individual problems with corners. There's a lot of little details that we got to work through to get our design complete. So we'll be working through that design through the rest of the summer and into the fall, with the anticipation that we'll have that design complete at the end of towards the end of the year. We'll bid it for a contractor around November, and then we'll hire a contractor, and sometime early next year they'll start construction. So that is kind of the timeline. One thing I want to mention tonight as I go through our concept and tell everyone what we've come up with, all of this is subject to change. Nothing, I like to say nothing is final until it's in concrete in the roadway. And even then, sometimes we have to come back and make changes. We don't want to do that, but everything is subject to change. We have been really beat up lately over where project budgets come in at. And as we put projects out to bid, inflation is hitting us probably harder than anyone, right? The concrete, asphalt, the cost of all these things is just through the roof. And so as we look at this project, we have to evaluate whether or not we can afford to do all the things we want to do. And you may see changes between now and when we actually get it built. So just be aware of that. And then obviously, if we hear from you as a community about a specific issue that we didn't consider during our concept development, we'll certainly take that in account. And if we need to make adjustments or changes, that's something we can still do. Nothing is final until it's in the ground. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And I think at this point, this is our existing roadway. So between 9th and 13th, we got really wide parking, really wide travel lanes, and no bike lanes. Between 13th and 17th, it's a different story. It's really tight parking, really tight bike lanes, and really tight travel lanes. So everything is just compressed. And it's the same width. The roadway is the same width in both areas. It's just the way it's been striped. So that's what's out there today. And if you want to go to the next slide, we get 6,000 to 9,000 vehicles per day, which is not crazy high. It's probably about the volume you'd expect to see on a road like this. We review all of our master plans. We looked at our bike ped master plan and identified that in this area it calls for buffered or protected bike lanes. And also we have 2 important neighborhood byway crossings at Kensington and Yale. And then finally, our McClellan Trail comes through here. And right now it kind of disappears and it's not great. And so we're looking at what can we do to fix that. And that's going to be part of our concept presentation to you tonight. So next slide. We've done a total of 2 surveys on this project already. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to participate in these. We rolled out an initial survey just asking people what they like about the road, what they don't like about the road, what can we address. And then we came up with an initial idea. We floated that past the community. We got a total of about 362 survey responses in this latest one. About 150 of those actually had very specific comments about things on this roadway. So about half the people that responded to our survey were very engaged, which is really great. And for us, that's actually a pretty good outcome. That's a pretty good response for a survey. We put out surveys all the time. This is a really good response. And it's the whole wide range. I think of those 150, about 50 people supported the recommended buffered bike lanes. 30% were looking for more traffic calming and pet improvements. And then 40% were looking to keep 40 of the people were looking to keep the parking. So kind of a wide range, right? And this is a challenge when we start talking about surveys and public engagement, because we'll get a lot of different perspectives. It's really valuable for us to hear all those perspectives because it informs the way we design this and think about how we're going to do it. Obviously, we can't please everybody. We can't give everybody everything that they want. But we've taken the input that we heard and we've tried to come up with a design that addresses the bulk of what we heard. So hopefully that makes sense tonight. About 70% of those people live in the area, which is really great too. That we're getting most people that took the survey actually live here and care about it. So that was really great. Next slide. So common themes we heard, traffic calming is really important for people. We're seeing speeds, right? High speeds on this roadway. This is not unique to the city. Everywhere, anytime I'm in any meeting, speeds come up. And it's something that we are definitely very concerned about. I think you guys have all seen recently that City Council adopted a change to go to 20 miles per hour. And so that's exciting. But it's not enough just to change the number on the sign. We actually, with a road like this, we try to figure out what can we do to design the road differently so that people drive slower on it. And that is the most effective way to get people to slow down, is to modify the design of the roadway a little bit. And so tonight I'm going to present a number of things that we've already got in the plans and in the works to do that will accomplish that. There are some other things that we're still evaluating, but we'll share that with you as well. We heard a lot from people about issues with just the crown of the road, curb and gutter, drainage. Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of problems out there with curb and gutter. It's in really bad shape. As we've been doing our surveys to figure out what we're going to replace and remove, it's a lot. There's a lot of curb and gutter that's really beat up. We also heard a lot of concerns about parking, both about how it's really busy. There's a lot of people parking on this corridor. There's apartments where people are parking. The flip side of that, we heard a lot of concerns from a lot of people about parking near intersections, and how that's blocking the ability of people to see traffic as they're trying to pull out on 11 of these. So that was a huge aha moment for us, that this is a big issue for this community and something that we want to try to address with our design. So you'll see several of our elements are trying to address that as we look through this. I'll grab to the next slide. Studies like this actually go out and collect a lot of parking data. We went out on this corridor on multiple days, multiple times, and we actually counted how many people were parked on every block face in every location and try to figure out what's going on this roadway. We also do a really detailed evaluation of how much parking is available on both sides of the roadway. And that's constrained by fire hydrants. You can't park near fire hydrants, constrained by driveways, by intersections, by crosswalks. And so, interestingly enough, a number of parking stalls that's available on either side of the street is a little bit different depending on where you are based on those things, whether it's driveways or whatnot. We also saw a lot of parking demand. That's absolutely in line with what we heard from the community. And there's a lot of people that park on street on this roadway. It's absolutely 100% true. At the peak of that parking, the busiest area that we saw was actually between Harrison and 13th South, right there, kind of just south of the market. There's that area right in there, kind of between the crosswalk for Emerson Elementary School. And that area is really, really busy for parking. We saw that was consistently very full, and at the peak, it's really packed full. Outside of that area, individual block faces, we saw areas where it's full, but then the next block it's not, and so you get this kind of spotty thing going on. So our concept design that we've developed should be able to fully accommodate the demand we saw out there at the peak. So we went out and counted all those people, and we should be able to accommodate that. But I'm not going to blow smoke or make it sound great. Parking is going to be harder to find than it was when we're done. It just will. You should be able to find an on-street parking stall within a block of where you are, but it's not going to be like exactly where you want it to be all the time. And it definitely will be a challenge and something that will take some getting used to. So definitely be aware of that. The third thing that we evaluate is whether or not people have off-street parking. So we looked at individual properties and said, hey, do you have a driveway? Do you have a garage? Do you have some? For the most part in this neighborhood, people do. A lot of times it's back alley, and I know that sometimes that gets full of snow and it's hard to use, but there was a property that didn't, and so we try to accommodate that in our design as well. So with that, Jason, could you grab the next slide? So let's start with our concept. This is the general, as we roll through, we're going to start at the north end and we're going to work our way south. So this is 900 South to Yale Avenue. So essentially up from the roundabout, just down a little bit. In this area, as we evaluated that parking demand and supply, we decided that the east side would be the best place to keep parking in this area because it has more stalls available. If we kept it on the west side, we'd actually have fewer stalls when we're done. So we're trying to optimize. We're trying to maximize what we have left over when we're done. We're also proposing a new marked crosswalk at Michigan Avenue. There's not one there today. As we look at this and we say, okay, well, we need to preserve parking on one side and we'll need to remove it from the other side. Let's put a marked crosswalk in people who are in that area that they can actually go to crosswalk and get across the street. Now, in our experiences, we've done this on a lot of other roads like 5th East. We've done this on Highland Drive, further south from you guys. People will still just park and they'll walk across the street wherever they are. And there's not a lot we can do to stop that, but we wanted to try to at least provide an additional marked crosswalk in this area. There's not one, and it's kind of a big space in here without one. So that's what we've proposed. So as I mentioned, parking will be removed from one side of the street, will be retained on the other side. That's to accommodate our bike lanes and buffers and travel lanes as called for in our bike ped master plan. So next slide, Jason. Yeah.
Is there any connection to the 9th South Trail by bike?
Yeah, so as we get right up to that intersection, we're going to want these bike lanes to seamlessly tie in. We're still working on that little detail right at that intersection. That's a really great question. We want to make it so that people that are on the trail can get right on these bike lanes. People on the bike lanes can get right on the trail, and that you won't have to do some weird wonky thing. That's a little detail that we're still working through, but definitely something we're aware of and want to accomplish.
That's right at the whale, right?
Right at the well.
Okay.
Yep, right at the well. Roll to the next slide down. We're going to get specific at Yale Avenue. So our Yale Avenue intersection is really unique. This will be a neighborhood byway someday. It's not quite yet, but we've identified it as a neighborhood byway. Now, people say, what does that mean? Because a lot of people don't know. A neighborhood byway is a street that we've identified in the city as being kind of a calmer, quieter street where it's comfortable to walk and bike and travel east-west for the most part. Most of them are east-west in the city. And the streets are already that way. And so we don't really need to do a whole lot to change the streets to make them more comfortable. Yale Avenue is not a high-pressure street. It's not a scary street to walk down or ride a bike down. But the problem with these neighborhood byways is you approach an intersection like 11th East, then it becomes a huge obstacle. And so as we look at this, we want to make that intersection really friendly for people. And what we've been doing throughout the city, whenever we have a neighborhood byway crossing at a major intersection like this, we do curb extensions where we actually take the curb and push it out into the roadway. And we put in bike ramps and we put in flashing beacons that tell people, hey, this is a crosswalk. If someone's walking in the area, they hit that button, they can get across. Or if they're riding their bike, they can ride their bike up there, hit the button and get across. We've done this successfully all over the city. We've got several examples we could show you. This is serves a lot of purposes. For us, one of the big purposes is the future neighborhood byway makes it work. More importantly, what we heard from the community is this desire to slow traffic. And putting these curb extensions in and narrowing the actual physical piece of the roadway also does that. It creates this kind of choke point where people slow down a little bit. As we go up and down this corridor, you're gonna see we're doing this at a lot of places. And so the idea is to create this kind of calmer, slower roadway. The other thing that's really interesting at Yale Avenue is to the south of here, the parking actually flips. If we retain parking on the west side of the road, we get to keep more parking than if we kept it on the east side of the road. And so we're gonna actually flip the side of the road that the traffic is on, and through the intersection, there will be a little bit of a jog for the travel lanes. So as you're driving on this roadway, you'll actually have to kind of, we call it a chicane. You'll actually have to kind of move your vehicle to the other side of the roadway a little bit. We designed this at 25 mile per hour speed, design speed. So we're hoping that that'll help slow people down too. As they hit this area and they have to kind of laterally shift, it slows them down. So that was one of the things we wanted to accomplish with this project, and it gave us that opportunity to both optimize our parking, slow traffic down. So that's our Yale Avenue intersection. South of here, it's essentially the same cross section we had to the north, but flipped. Parking will be on the other side of the street. Next slide is at Princeton Avenue intersection. So this is another one of those locations where we say, hey, there's a pretty important crosswalk here. Let's put in a curb extension. Now you'll notice we've only been able to do it on one side of the street, and that's because the bike lane is right up against the curb and gutter on the other side of the street. So Princeton is just south of Red Butte Creek Crossing. That helps you kind of orient yourself. And so that's our current plan here at Princeton, is to kind of put that in, put the crosswalk back in, and just make it another one of those points that kind of slows people down a little bit. Next slide down. So at McClellan Trail, this is one we've really gone back and forth a lot of different ideas on. The best idea that we've been able to come up with is the idea that we would create a crossing at the McClellan Trail for people who are northbound on 11th East to be able to get across the street right there and get onto the McClellan Trail. So this is just north of Bertoli's and the market, right? So there'll be a little bit of a curb extension on the one side of the street. People on a bike in that bike lane northbound will be able to just pull off into there, hit a button, cross the street. There'll be the flashing beacons like what we've seen elsewhere, and that'll get you right on the McClellan Trail. If you're headed the other way and coming from the McClellan Trail, you'll be able to pull right out into the bike lane and head south. If you're a pedestrian on the McClellan Trail, you just use the sidewalks from here to the south, and it works out pretty well. So we've been trying to think of both people who are walking, biking, families who are riding bikes, and try to accommodate everybody that's using the trail to the best of our ability. Then next slide, to the south of here, between 13th South and Harrison, if you remember, this is the area where we saw a really heavy parking demand. We also want to, and we'll see in a minute when we get to Harrison, we also want to create that bulb out or that curb extension filling on both sides of the street. And to do that, we really needed to retain parking on both sides of the street so that we could get that full effect at Harrison. And so this is an area where the bike lanes will be a bit tight, parking will be tight, everything will be really tight. This is for about a block, not quite a block. It's just that little piece between 13th and Harrison. And it's really to accommodate that McClellan Trail crossing and also our heavy parking demand.
Do you have a plan view of the intersection at 13th South?
I didn't bring one tonight. It stays a lot like what it is.
So no curb extensions, no.
There's not a lot of room for it. We've been evaluating that for a while. That's something we could still consider talking about, but yeah, we've looked at the intersection and said, there's not a lot of opportunity here to do much, and it's already signalized. A lot of the traffic calming features don't work that well at a signal, they defeat each other, right? And so we've decided at this point in time to just leave 13th South intersection more or less like it is. We'll be replacing broken pieces of sidewalk. We'll be replacing the ramps to make them ADA compliant. We'll be doing stuff like that. So there will be some work there, but it won't be transformative, if that makes sense. Next slide down at Harrison Avenue. For me, this intersection is one of the more important intersections on the corridor because we have two things going on. We've got the school crossing, which we know a couple kids got hit in that crosswalk.
It was last December.
Last December. Now, thank goodness they're okay, right? And I keep moving further over.
You do, I'm tracking you, but yeah, if you could stay a little closer over there.
You bet.
Got some drift.
We also know Harrison is where the McClellan Trail turns to go the other direction. And so this is a really important intersection. And what we have decided is we've looked at this intersection. We have the opportunity to make the entire intersection a raised intersection, where the surface of that intersection will be 6 inches taller than what you would expect. It'll be at the same elevation as the sidewalk. So as drivers and cars are approaching this intersection, they'll come up and over, right? And we're still working through a lot of the nuances and designs that I think a lot of people have asked me about raised crosswalks on this roadway, and that's something we're still interested in pursuing. It's just really challenging because a raised crosswalk creates all this drainage issue that we have to deal with. And, you know, as you're coming, we don't want to build them. I don't know if you guys have seen the raised crosswalk on 2700 South. We have several in there. They're designed in a way that the pedestrian has to come down to the roadway and then they come back up into the roadway. And honestly, you only get about 1 to 2 inches of raise out of it. And it doesn't really work that well for slowing traffic. And so another design is to try to keep that crosswalk high and then build little ditches on the gutter line that keep water flowing. The city doesn't have a good way to maintain those right now. And so the maintenance issue is really what's killing us and stopping us from doing that. I think you did the little, yeah, money's part of it for sure. But more than anything on those, it's maintenance. It's worried about getting leaves stuck in the gutters and getting the whole thing to drain. At this raised intersection, actually, with our raised intersection fairly well. We still have some details to work out. This is not a guarantee, right? This is what we're hoping to accomplish. And so at this point in time, we're pushing forward to get a raised intersection at this. And we don't really have any in the city. This will be kind of a first. So we're excited about that. And it's a really great opportunity to do it. And for us, it's the combination of the trail users, the kids going to school. I mean, there's so much going on at this intersection. It really is a great opportunity for us to do something special. So that's what we're looking to do at this intersection. As we go further south, between Harrison and Logan, parking will be retained again on the west side of the roadway, just like it is to the north. You'll see us flip that a couple times as we go back and forth, but between Harrison and Logan, that's the plan. This is very similar to what you saw further north. You want to hit the next slide down. At Kensington, we have another neighborhood byway. So this is an opportunity for us to do the curb extensions again and the flashing. Again, on this one, you'll notice that we're only doing the curb extension on one side of the road and not the other. That's because that bike lane runs right on the curb line and we can't do the curb extensions in that area. So that's what we've come up with at Kensington. Next slide down.
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
Kensington eventually is going to get a byway, right?
And that one will happen sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire Kensington byway is actually getting ready to go into design. So that's really exciting.
So you're preparing for that as you do this reconstruction.
We want to build this now rather than build the intersection the way it is and have the Kensington byway come back in and tear it all up and redo it. So it's kind of a do it once while we're here attitude. Next slide down. At Bryan Avenue, we're proposing curb extensions again. This was actually part of another project that we've been working on to improve traffic calming around the McClellan Trail. And we said, well, wait a minute, we're not going to build this with the McClellan Trail project because it doesn't make sense to do that. We're going to take it and put it into our project. So you'll see that get built as part of our project. One more slide down, I think. This is at Logan, again, another curb extension. So as you notice, a lot of our major crosswalks, all of them will have curb extensions. A lot of them will have the flashing beacons, raised intersection, and then parking one side to get us our buffer bike lanes, and that flips back and forth. So that's really the gist of what we're talking about doing with this roadway. If you want to, I think only have 1 or 2 slides left. We showed this the last time we were here, I think in January, if I remember right. We have not made a lot of progress with looking at the bus stops. This is something we'll be working on between now and final design. We've proposed some alterations to the locations. It's identical to what we showed back in January. We haven't moved forward on this. It's still the plan, but we still have a lot of work to do. You may see these individual locations shift around as we run into drainage issues or design issues or problems with any one location. Generally, what you're going to see on this corridor is that there will be now they're spaced really close together, and that actually isn't great for the bus because they'll skip a stop if nobody's there, but it makes it really unreliable because they might have to stop at all of them or they might have to stop at 3 of them. So as a city, you'll see with a lot of our bus routes, we're actually consolidating bus stops. We're getting them spaced a little bit more appropriately so that the transit riders can still get to them reasonably, but also it just helps with our bus operations, helps them go faster, be more reliable, more useful for people. So that's generally, we're doing that all over the city, and this is no exception to that. I think we have one more slide. So we're still open to lots of feedback. I think our mantra is always, we never stop hearing from you, and anytime you want to talk to us, please do reach out to us. We'd love to hear your input. I think the next time that we'll be at this meeting will probably be around fall or early winter, when we're nearing the completion of our design and we have all of the details worked out. We'll be back here sharing with you all those little details. But in the meantime, if you have questions or concerns or comments, please reach out to us. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be working, well, months, honestly, we're going to be working really hard to get the word out. Leah Smith is here with me. She's from engineering.
Yeah.
She's our civic engaging lead
Yeah.
at engineering. Leah, do you want to say anything
Can
about
I
that?
like Debbie Downer a little
Yeah, come on up.
bit? Hi, yeah, my name is Leah
Let's get over
Smith.
this one.
Can you stand right there?
I work in the engineering department at Salt Lake City. I assist with all the outreach. So yeah, what Lynn said, we are doing our best to receive comments and implement them as best we can. While we are doing our best to obviously listen to our residents and our citizens, we obviously want this design to move forward in a timely fashion. So we would like to accept your comments. We cannot implement them all, especially because we want to stay in budget. So yeah, you aren't gonna hear from us for a little bit. We're gonna finalize the design, put pretty bows on everything. And then the next thing you'll hear from us will be for construction updates. We're gonna hopefully start in 2023. We'll come back to you when we have a contractor on board, and we will come back with timeline. And that's when we get to talk about fun things like construction impact and what you're gonna see when we're out on the ground. But yeah, Lynn is a great contact if you have any questions about the design. If you have questions about construction, I have cards on me as well. But we're really excited about this project.
Excellent. Question.
I think you said in your initial slide, Lynn, but is it just a 1-year construction process?
That is still the plan.
Can you scoot this way a little bit? Sorry. Thanks.
That is still the plan, 1-year construction. So the question for those online, is it still a 1-year construction process? That is still what we're planning on doing. As I mentioned earlier, this is a huge project. I think right now we're actually planning on hiring 2 different contractors to build it because it's just so big. We know that even the best contractors out there can only do so much in a month. And we've looked at the size and scale of these 2 projects and said, this might be too much for one contractor to take on. Now, obviously that creates all sorts of fun when they interact with each other where the 2 projects meet, but that's currently the plan. And that is what we hope will keep us on task. Now, it's really important that we actually do this in 1 year because in 2024, the following year, we're going to be reconstructing 13th East in Sugar House from 2100 South to the south. So we did 2100 South North. Now we're coming back and we're doing south of 21st South. So bear with us. Yeah. And then the following year, we're going to be reconstructing 21st South in Sugar House. And so we can't let this one slip because it has a huge domino effect on these other projects. We really got to stick on schedule. Now, that said, you may see what we call punch list items the following year where we have little irrigation problems we got to fix or little details that they got to work out. But the bulk of the work should be done in that 1 year. Yeah.
I'm curious because I've lived in other cities. Why are our crosswalks only on one side, like Yale and 11? It's on the south side.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, why can't we paint stripes on the north side?
We debate this. You would not even imagine the debates that we have about whether we should stripe both sides or not. Do you want to go back to Yale?
So as a pedestrian,
Yeah.
you technically need to go south.
Yeah, well, I think the perspective is that in the city, our code is that if there is a curb cut, you have the legal right as a pedestrian to be crossing there, and everyone is supposed to yield to you. Supposed to is the hard part of that.
I think we got Yale.
So we have that argument all the time. At Yale, we're actually going to end up with crosswalks on both sides. So we're trying to do that wherever we can. There's a lot of debate about, maintenance of the paint and there, which doesn't seem like much, but when you look at the city as a whole, it actually adds up quite a bit. There's also a debate about, if we put too many crosswalks in, they become less effective because drivers start to ignore them because they're just everywhere and they say, well, I'm just going to blow through here. This is part of the debate. Now, we're all over the map with that, but we tend to try to be uniform as a city, and that's been our MO lately. So, but with Yale, with these neighborhood byway crossings, absolutely, both crosswalks will be marked and they'll both have flashing beacons. So big upgrade. Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it set in cement that you're not going to have any parking on the west side of the street from 9th South to 13th? Because a lot of the houses on the west side are rentals and they have, I mean, I have a rental across the street and they have like 7 cars sometimes. And
Yeah.
so what that's going to do is drive up and, you know, people are going to be storing their cars up in Gilmore Park, you know, and on the side streets. And I really think that you should keep the parking on both sides. I mean, all these people are going to be having to park on the west side and getting out of their cars and crossing with groceries and kids all over the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good idea for, you know, people having to cross the street with their possessions and whatever all of the time. I just don't think that's it. And then especially down at the corner where Hub and Spoke is, I don't know if you've gone there, you know, on Saturdays or Sunday mornings. I mean, the cars are just jammed up in the side streets.
Yeah.
And
You're not wrong. And I think there are a lot of people that actually share your perspective. There are a lot of people that share the opposite perspective that, no, we should even be putting protected bike lanes in, and that would force us to remove all of the parking on the street and force everyone to the side streets. We've tried to find a balance in there. So that's the design that you've seen tonight, is that balance that we've tried to strike between meeting the needs of people who are walking, biking, driving, parking, taking transit. We're trying to balance all of these things out. And through our analysis, we've looked at it and said, absolutely, as we take parking away from one side of the street, those people are going to shift to the other side. It will make it harder to find parking, but there is enough space for everybody based on our analysis. And occasionally we will see people parking on side streets, and that's just part of living in a city. You know, we're really fortunate here in Salt Lake City that we have so much free parking already. And in this case, we need to sacrifice some of it to rebalance the way the street functions. So
I think that the residents who live there every single day and load their cars 2 or 3 times a day should take precedence over cyclists. That's just my opinion, because we have to live there every day.
Well, and I think about 70% of our survey respondents live in this area or on this corridor. And we saw about half and half, right? So I think there's both perspectives out there. And I totally respect both of those opinions. The design we've come up with is based on that analysis and also on our master plans and all the planning and guidance that we've got as a city. What is the right thing to do with this road? That's what we've come up with. We've done this on other streets, 5th East, right out here. You'll notice there's no parking on one side of the street for pretty much the whole length for a lot of it. Highland Drive in the Highland Park neighborhood, we did this a couple of years ago, and it's not easy. It's hard. It's a sacrifice. It's a huge challenge, and you're not wrong. But people tend to adapt to it and they get used to it, and it's frustrating. Most of these properties, well, all the properties except for one, have off-street parking of some sort. That one property, the parking actually does stay on that side by luck, right? There's so much parking. It's one of those places where there's more parking on the side of the street where that one property is than on the other. And so it worked out, right? Everybody should have a parking spot or 2 or 3, you know, it does take some getting used to. It's definitely a shift in your behavior, and that's hard. Change is difficult. But looking at this roadway, it's really what we need to do with this roadway. You had a question, comment?
I have 2 questions. Is this asphalt?
Yes, asphalt.
Okay.
We may do some special treatments at crosswalks with concrete to make them pop. That's something, if we can fit in budget, that's what we'll try to do. But
My other question is there money in the budget for landscaping?
there is not,
Good.
because the park strip is generally the property
I know
owner's
that's-
responsibility. When we, there will be a little bit, let me caveat that. There's a lot of bad curb and gutter on this roadway. When we go out and we pull out that old curb and gutter and we set forms to pour a new curb and gutter, we will disrupt the landscaping behind that curb and gutter. And the contractor will be responsible to restore it to like condition. So essentially whatever is out there, that's what you're gonna back in. And it's just in the places where we've disturbed it because we had to take care of curb and gutter issues or things like that.
Well, the reason I bring this up,
Yeah,
and I keep doing it. It's on 9th South years ago, they did that whole redo between 9th East and 7th East, I guess. Big parking strips there. They put down sod, they planted trees. And if you go back now and see the condition of that landscaping, the trees didn't last 2 years and it's just a mess.
I will caveat to the south of here in the Sugar House Central Business District on Highland Drive and 11th East, we will be replacing landscape with that project because we are responsible for that. It's part of our Central Business District maintenance
Will you
responsibilities.
take care of it?
Yeah, and actually, this is really an interesting story because we met with a lot of the business owners down there. Now, just like you, they don't all agree, right?
Yeah.
We never get everybody to agree to everything. But the bulk of people that we heard from actually want us to move to more water-wise type landscaping in the Central Business District area. And so as we are replacing landscaping down in that neck of the woods, you're gonna see a lot less grass and a lot more water-wise type landscaping.
Okay.
So that's happening. We'll probably have a very similar bent when we do 21st South in a couple of years. So that project we're at initial stages of that one. So if you guys have opinions about 21st South, yeah, we don't want to do that. But I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Great comment. Any other questions? Jason, did I run over? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I take 1100 East to bike up to the Sugar House Park Road Trail all the way to my sister's house. It's kind of in a Canyon River neighborhood. Yeah, I appreciate the bike lanes in lieu of side parking, just because there's numerous stretches where you're biking along, and all it takes is just a driver car door to kind of knock you out. And yeah, it does kind of create a less safe, more hostile environment for cyclists. So I appreciate the bike lanes there. Also, I support crosswalks on north side, south side, east side, west side, usually. And I have a hunch that if traffic needs to slow at those crosswalks, I bet you that the adjacent parking will be more utilized. So you won't see this kind of condensed parking in one area, because people aren't going 35 right across, past parking, they'll be going 20, 25, and see the parking available. Maybe walk the extra 30, 40 feet, but it's still, that parking will be more utilized. Lastly, I also, I love the raised sidewalks. I encourage them to happen and the commitment for it, because I know that like on 500 East, the raised sidewalks ended up being lowered, and 900 South, when those are modeled, the raised sidewalks and the pedestrian islands, I think, were shaped down. So the more commitment, the better. I love it. It's all great. So
we always have to struggle between these maintenance and cost, and the real world hits us and we go, oh, I wanted to do that. There are a couple things that you made me think of that I didn't mention. One of the things we heard really strongly from this community was that concern about parking near the intersections and how that blocks people's sight. These bulb outs and curb extensions should really help with that, because it will make it so that people can no longer park right at the intersection. They'll have to come at least a few feet away and give us that sight distance. And then, essentially it also moves it so that that conflict point between you and cross street traffic is further out in the intersection. So you can get out there, see what feels safe, see what's going on. Hopefully that really helps with that safety concern. The other thing I forgot to mention, a lot of people ask me, hey, why are we only doing bike lanes for a couple blocks or for the length of this project? This project will complete bike lanes from all the way near 33rd South in Mill Creek to the roundabout, which is a really long stretch. And so our Highland Drive project now, it won't be bike lanes everywhere, but there will be a bike facility for the entire length of that. So Mill Creek's new village and their new development that they're doing, that will now be connected to Sugar House for people who walk, bike, take transit, any way that you want to come to and from those two communities, you can get there. So we've coordinated really closely with Mill Creek over the last several years to make sure our plans are aligning and that we're doing things together, and we're just making sure that it makes sense. And so this is not just a couple blocks, this is miles that we're connecting, which is really important. So, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
My email address is in the presentation, but
And in the agenda as well. Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. I really appreciate the level of detail you provided, really block by block. That's what's so helpful. People can see exactly what's going to happen in their neighborhood. What's interesting is, we experienced this recently with 9th South being reconstructed around the roundabout down on kind of the eastern side of 9th and 9th. It was tough. It was, a burden, but it looks great now, right? And those bike lanes and the whale, whatever you think of that, but at least, it works, right? And so this is going to be a disruption, but we're going to get a great street. And 11th East is kind of like going over railroad tracks in some parts. It's really bumpy for cars and for cyclists. So a better street is going to be good. And it'll happen before they reconstruct the other side of 9th South over in the 9th and 9th Business District. So we'll try to kind of pinwheel these a little bit to make sure we're not all being disrupted at the same time. But the end result will be great. Thank you very much for giving us this presentation.
Jason, I think they're gonna happen at the same time. I'm really sorry.
Are they
about
really?
that.
Okay. I thought they were going 2024.
For 9th South,
9th South over by the Business District.
we're going. I'm sorry, I have to think about this. Yeah, so right now, our goal is for phase 2 of 9th South, the one that's getting built right now, to go from 900 West to go at least to 2nd East this year, and then go from 2nd East to 945 East next year.
Okay, so 2023. All right, I stand corrected.
Surprise, I'm so sorry.
Maybe they could start on the western side and work their way, and that will hopefully,
I think so. I'll
Yeah.
double check with our contractors, but I think we're gonna keep moving.
they're not connected, they're not teed, right? But it's still, you always
There's
looking.
a small gap.
Yeah, about 2 blocks.
And ours is a partial depth reconstruction, which helps with the construction.
It won't be as much, right?
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Okay,
It'll be painful, but it won't be as painful as some other parts. When we're down doing Highland Drive or 11th East, like between Ramona and 21st South, ooh, it's tough.
okay.
Those are tough areas.
Are there going to be streetcar tracks underneath 11th East?
There are some in spots, yeah.
Okay, all right.
We're, yeah.
That'll be fun. That was fun when they pulled those out of 9th South. That was a blast from the past, so.
We're thinking about repurposing those as art installation.
Okay.
So hey, you do what you can.
Right. What did they call those? Sherman's bow ties during Civil War through the March to the South? Sorry, a little bit of history. But let's move on. Go on to Monique Higginson, who's here to tell us a little bit about the real estate market, which if you've been looking at housing prices in your neighborhood, maybe even your own, there's a lot going on, and she's got the latest details and numbers about what's happening. Something that a lot of people are thinking about. And we'll get some good answers to your questions and some good data to look at. So Monique, thanks for being here. I should say Monique is an ELPCO resident as well.
For 12 years.
And lives on 11th East.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been selling homes in and around ELPCO for 20 years. So it's been an interesting long ride. We've all seen a lot of changes, especially in our area in the last 20 years, for sure. So if you can pull up my presentation, I'm more of a numbers and spreadsheet person, so I don't have a beautiful thing for you to look at here. But the biggest thing is that I don't know if any of you kind of understand where a lot of this stemmed from the last couple of years of just craziness that we've had. But during the pandemic, there was such a sharp decrease in new inventory that we just absolutely have not caught up. It's just, I don't even know how that's ever going to happen. So it's really concerning. I mean, I have 3 children. I don't know if they're going to be able to live in our area. So I definitely have mixed feelings. So that's me. I'm the owner and broker of Market Source Real Estate. So kind of something I thought that would be interesting is to look at Salt Lake County and then look at 84105, which is basically our area. Obviously expands a little bit beyond that. But so the average days on market in the last 30 days in Salt Lake County was 13. Which is just so low. I mean, really in a balanced market, less than a 30-day marketing time is considered a fast sale. The average asking price, $627, average sold price of $645. And that means the average sales to list price ratio is 103%. And I guarantee you, there are some that are going for 120 and there are some that are going for a little bit less. So, it's fierce. I mean, I remember probably 10 years ago, looking at stats and just being shocked, you know, that we were getting close to 100 after the, you know, the big real estate crisis. So if you go to the next. So current inventory of homes in Salt Lake County, and I want to qualify that because it's single family units, not multifamily, not commercial, not land, because just for consistency in numbers. We only have 1226 active listings in the entire Salt Lake County. And that's insanity for sure. There's 2153 homes that are basically under contract. So those will be closing in the next month. And if you go to the next. So the recent sold inventory in Salt Lake County, there were 1310 homes sold in the last 30 days. So, I mean, just looking at the numbers, you can see that we're replacing or we're selling every last home in the market every 30 days. And it's getting a little bit better, but not nearly enough. So if you go next. This is a little bit hard to see, so I'd like to kind of just point if that's not too funny. So here's second quarter of 2019, we had 7,000 listings. Then the so literally in such a short time. So that's why you can see that, you know, we just have such a short of inventory and it keeps dropping and dropping more. And so of course the price just keeps going up. And this is just Salt Lake County. This isn't even our area, which is even very different.
So the blue line there is median price, sale price.
Yes.
So that is the thing that's climbing.
Yeah, very steadily.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. But inventory is also, as you can see, those are our seasonal dips, right? Every winter, summer, those are kind of the cycles, but it's just getting lower and lower and lower because of demand. Okay, so because it's more relevant to us, I thought we'd address 84105. So go to the next. So the average days on market is 6. And that's generous. Most of the time I put a home on the market on a Thursday and it's gone by Sunday because we cut offers off because there are so many that it's overwhelmed. So, you know, it's kind of rough. So our average list price, 825, average sold price is 865 and 84105. And that's as of today. These stats are this afternoon. So that's an average of 105% sales to list price ratio. And the reality is that mostly I'm seeing homes sell 10 to 20% over asking. So it means that some things that are clouding the stats are just people initially overpricing or doing something and then having to drop the price. You go to next. So in all of 84105, we have 23 active listings, 23 houses out of tens of thousands of people. So this right now, the price range is from 547 to 3.1 million. And again, that includes Harvard, Yale, you know, Yale Crest, because it's, you know, above 13. So it's a little bit skewed here for our little neighborhood that we're talking about.
Outside of ELPCO. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's outside.
The hoity-toity side.
Yeah. But again, that's why I just wanted to compensate for one if it's where mostly.
Sure, that's what we identified.
Yeah. So there's 33 under contract and backup listings, ranging from 415 to 2 million. So 23 active, 33 under contract. Believe it or not, this is a major, major improvement because a few months ago, for every one house that was active, there were 8 under contract in 84105. So I would show people hundreds of houses. We'd write up dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of offers. And I've never worked so hard in my entire life. But the rising interest rates definitely made a change, and it has definitely slowed the past 2 weeks. But we're not really seeing that in stats yet. But you know, most listings are getting 3 to 5 offers around here instead of 20 to 40. So it's a big improvement. Kind of something. We're going in the right direction, I think. You don't mind going to the next. So recent sold inventory, you can see we're very close to 25 to 30 homes a month that are selling. Well, and again, sorry, that's obvious. If you'll go to the next. So here's that same home sales graph, but for just 84105. So again, you can see we went from 176 to 74 in just 5 seconds, which was crazy. And the price has gone from 471 to 662 in the span of less than 3 years. And that, I don't see that changing. There's not a lot of infill building. How is that going to get any better? I'm not sure, unless rates just skyrocket. We have so much in-migration into our state for people moving here. There's natural population growth, and there's a lack of building. And I'll keep my opinions to myself, but I think we do need to look at more and more density as much as we can, or it's going to be a terrible crisis.
So you don't think it's a bubble?
No, not here. There's zero indication of a bubble. You know, the biggest difference is that in 2007, I remember I could get somebody a house, you know, it like went 41% to their debt to income ratio. They bought the very most that they could. They had 5% down. So guess what? When things get hard or they can't afford their sewer problem, they walked.
So now people are paying, are most offers cash offers?
They are not. It's around 15 to 20%. I know, and that's not what people think.
Could you,
but-
15 to 20% cash offers,
Yeah.
just because people in the audience might not.
Well, and that's here.
Okay.
That's a very different story in different markets. Yeah.
Oh,
And the other thing that I'm observing is that most of my clients that are buying here, if they're not cash, they're putting down at least 20%. They're qualifying on one of their incomes, not both. So consumer habits are really, really, really responsible. And I think that's definitely going to help us not be in any kind of a bubble. So our market conditions are just, there's too much demand, there's too many good factors, but that just means we have a big problem on our hands. So, what's next? So we kind of talked about most of this, but I did want to point out a traditional balanced market. I mean, in the last 20 years when I've been in the business, 1 to 3 months seem to be pretty quick to sell a house. And in a balanced market, it's 3 to 6 months. So 6 days, 13 days, it's just crazy. So that's kind of, yeah, it shows you where things are. And there's one last one, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yep, sorry.
Yep.
This is just, again, kind of my summation is that there's just such demand. There's absolutely such demand that I don't see any way that things are going to change very much for a while. The economics just make sense for it to keep going this way. So I think that we're not going to see any major shifts until rates either skyrocket or some crazy economic event happens. I just have no idea how things will slow down.
For those of us who aren't very good at math, can you explain why rising interest rates will cause a decrease in demand? Is that right? Is that what it would do?
It does, because unfortunately, though, what it means is that the bottom end of the market, the people that, you know, they were just trying to buy something for $350 and now rates are 2% higher, they no longer qualify. So they give up, they go rent, they go move in with family, they do something else. So that definitely decreases demand.
Because it's harder to borrow money, is that right?
Yeah, and some people
Okay.
just simply
It's more expensive to borrow money.
Yeah.
It's just a bigger monthly payment. You have a higher interest rate.
Right, but it literally knocks a lot of people out of being qualified. So sorry, that was a lot of data and information, but are there any specific questions that I can answer for anybody? I'll give you a lot, sorry.
I guess I've got one.
Yeah.
For people who are maybe empty nesters in their 50s or 60s, thinking about moving, is this the time to do it, to sell their house? And I mean, what are the, you know, you always want to kind of take advantage of a good market. Is this the time to do it? Or what are the questions that they should be asking?
Well, interestingly enough, the luxury market isn't being affected at all yet. It's really the market, kind of the semi-luxury market between $550 and $900. That market is a lot more sensitive to the rates that are in play now by going up. So I don't think so. I think that you can just wait until it's the right time.
Okay.
I don't see it again. I think we may level off a little bit, but I don't see any kind of decline.
Any kind of decline happening?
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha. So you don't need to jump on it right now, perhaps, if you're not ready.
No, and I have some
Yeah.
clients where I'm like, hey, I don't think rates are going to move too much. There's increasing inventory. Why don't you just sit and wait for the right thing to come up instead of just fight to the death for a house now? You know, so I feel like things are maybe not equalizing, but leveling off and being a little bit more favorable for buyers. Meaning they can actually get a house. Yeah.
What number is a jumbo now?
About 650, I think 647. So they did increase it from 6 to 647. And that helps, it really does. Because again, the average price in Salt Lake County is about 650. So we're all in the luxury market. I mean, think about that, that's crazy. So, yeah.
Questions from our online audience for Monique? You can chat them in, or can you double check? Don't see any yet. Is this affecting all cities, Monique? Is this, or is Salt Lake kind of one of those sort of more hotspots around the country?
It's absolutely a hotspot around the country.
Okay.
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, unfortunately, so I mean, living right here attracts a certain diverse kind of group of people, but I would say at least a third of my buyers are from California, New York. They're from large markets, and they have plenty of money, and they're not afraid of it. And this is a slower, nicer life for them, where everything's more affordable. So I don't see that slowing down. Also, again, remote work has really changed things for people. I have definitely moved some people who work online, you know, from the city, and then they go get some house in a rural location. And that's kind of fun to see. But for the most part, it's people coming in from big cities and coming here.
We hear about hedge funds and corporates, people buying up houses. Is there any truth to that rumor, or what?
There is in some markets, but not here. No, if you've heard of Open Door, that's them. I've seen them list some homes, unfortunately, in kind of marginalized areas where they probably are just really taking advantage of people that don't understand what their home is worth. They don't have the money to do repairs. So it's extremely predatory, in my opinion. Oh, I shouldn't have said the name. Yikes. Anyway.
We can believe it. Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, believe it, please. But markets outside of Atlanta, Georgia, they're buying huge mass amounts of properties and then renting them out or just reselling them. So it is a concern, not too much here.
Yeah. I just have a comment. My nephew, we got him into a house last December, but we were looking for 3 months, and I would say probably maybe 50% of the houses that we looked at had been bought by an investor and redone, kind of sort of like live with the cheap kind of a kitchen. It looked good.
Flippers.
Yeah. And that was, so it wasn't really homeowners like selling, you know, and moving up to whatever it was for. But then another comment too is how do you feel that the short-term rental business like Airbnb or Airbnb is affecting the prices of our housing, because they're basically removing a lot of rentals where people would maybe live and save up some money, and they've converted them into hotels and motels. How have you seen, what's your perspective?
Could you repeat the question too? Sorry.
Yeah, so how are short-term rentals affecting our market? It's one more major issue that's taking away inventory that we need.
Right.
And I do believe the Salt Lake City planning to be more aggressive with shutting those down and looking at those, but you know, I don't really know. So what percentage are becoming short-term rentals though? It's really not much when you look at the percentage. So it's an interesting stat that I could maybe figure out how to get, but I don't actually know. And I do have some comments about flipping. A lot of flippers are terrible. They don't pull permits. They don't do anything. They shield things from the next buyer, and so the buyer's severely damaged. So that's a really negative part. But there are some good flippers out there, and we do need homes to be renovated, especially in areas where, you know, they're lower income areas. Nobody has money to even maintain the homes. Sometimes it's literally the only way that property is going to get the upgrades it needs and get turned over. So there's some positive, but a lot of negative.
It's just like when you're looking at at least percent, we're not owned by like
No.
regular, you know, person with a couple kids or
But
something.
at least with the flip, they're reselling it to a homeowner usually. So, you know, there's pros and cons for sure. Yeah.
I'm curious if this information transfers over to condo and condo real estate. The trends are the same or different. In my kind of anecdotal experience, it seems like medium-sized cities like ours, like Portland, they have more condo stock and therefore the condo prices seem more obtainable than compared to here. But yeah, I was kind of curious as to what the condo circumstances were looking like.
Well, we don't have a fraction of enough condos because it does create entry-level housing. Everything you see being built downtown are all apartments. Almost none of them are condos to be able to, you know, for purchase. And I think that is just a huge detriment to our market. I don't know how it's going to change because the people in power with money kind of dictate what goes on, but that is not what's best for us. So absolutely, we have a missing entry-level housing problem for sure, especially on the east side of Salt Lake.
Well, I know that they've allowed accessory dwelling units.
In certain
My alley that runs behind my house, there are a number of them. And I just learned from a neighbor who built a house on top of this garage that he is Airbnb-ing it. So that's not gonna help the.
Well, you know, the only way they can shut those down right now is if you file a complaint. If you,
Oh, well, I mean, it doesn't affect me
Okay,
personally,
look.
but I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
know, we allowing those to.
absolutely, because those create lower income dense
Yeah.
housing in areas that we need it. I personally will, well, I think at some point they'll probably allow them to be even in non-owner occupied units. Yeah, it's a great way to create density and more housing, even though some people are going to complain because of parking issues and other things, but I fully believe that's a great resource.
But my neighbor said, oh, I'm making so much more doing this than
Yeah,
renting it
right.
on a monthly basis, and I,
Right.
not the headaches that I have.
Exactly,
So-
that's why I don't know what the answer to that is, but
Okay.
we better figure some things out pretty quickly.
I thought people used to host visitors in their house. And
That's what it
in their
started
spare
out as,
room,
is
and
a-
then they fed
Oh,
them.
it became a
breakfast
business.
before they-
Yep.
Not anymore.
Any other questions for Monique?
Good job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yep. We appreciate you coming back to us, Monique. You were here last spring giving us an update. We were wondering how long this roller coaster was going to last. We're still on it. So we're still climbing, falling, hard to tell. Depends if you're a buyer or a seller, I guess. I want to bring on Tim Cosgrove from the Salt Lake City Mayor's Office to wrap things up. And then we'll end with a couple of announcements about some important events. Tim, you're online, so let me activate you. You look reputable. I think we know who you are. There we go, Tim.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure being with you. I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks. I had just a few things. So, you know, we're knee deep and ear high. I think it's the analogy in the mayor's budget. She presented it to the city council for May 3rd. The presentation has also had public comment, and we have one more opportunity for public comment before the city council will vote. I will put a link in the chat with the mayor, with the link to the mayor's budget, so you can take a look at that. She wants to hear from you and see how you feel, what you think about the proposal. As you know, Salt Lake City is growing. That's good news. And Salt Lake City is growing. That's challenging news. I know the Kim Gardner Policy Institute up at the U of U said that we have a evening population of around 200,000 and a daytime population of 360,000. With that, it was like 83% of the people that have a job in Salt Lake City do not live in Salt Lake City. So it kind of tells you the demand that our city population is growing. And so is the demand for services. The mayor highlighted when she took office as city council in 2014, the city's population has since grown almost 11,000 people, just over 10,500. So those residents, along with our swelling daytime population of 360,000, has created an extra demand on our parks, on our open space, on our public safety professionals, our infrastructure, our city employees. That's also increased with the demands from the residents. And they continue to express their desire for higher level of services and programming from the city. The mayor's general fund budget recommendation came in just over 424 million. She's concentrating on significant investments in affordable housing, over 21 million, public lands, air quality, homelessness, public safety, equity, transit, transportation, environmental protection. The budget does include 3 increases to property tax this year, which combined those costs for a resident who owns a home valued at $520,000, an extra $130 per year, or about $10 per month. I was on Wasatch Hollow Community Council last night with Council Member Dan Dugan, and he also shared that the home value up there is a little higher for about $720,000, and that equates to a $200 a year, or about $15 per month for property owners. And that, of course, depends more or less on the county's valuation of your property. There's also a general obligation bond. This will be on the November ballot. That's for you, the voters, to decide. We're asking for 80 million that the residents, that we will use to help improve our public lands, our parks, and our urban trails. There was a survey that was conducted this year recently with more than 70% saying that they would support a general obligation bond to pay for increased parks, public lands, and their expansion and improvements. I'll put that link in the chat. I could answer some questions if you have any for me. The next hearing at the City Council will be June 7th, Tuesday at 7 p.m. So I encourage you to attend and share your thoughts with the City Council. What else? Oh, Lynn Jacobs brought this up, so I wanted to touch base on that. I appreciate that, Lynn, if you're still there. But the mayor is elated for the City Council approving the reduction of the speed limit from 25 to 20 miles per hour in our residential neighborhoods. She's said this time and time again, everyone deserves to walk or bike through our neighborhoods and enjoy our community without fear of becoming injured or killed by a moving vehicle. So with these changes, the City Council has implemented these life-saving changes. It reflects roughly on 420 miles of city-owned roadways, or about 70% of the street, which is a big step towards a safer city for you, and our residents deserve this. She also, and I know our very own beloved Jason Stevenson was working with the mayor on this, because I was in the middle of the emails, the communication, but the Safe Streets Task Force, and the proposal that the mayor's also has in her budget for an additional FTE to work towards building a more holistic approach with pedestrian and bicycle safety planning, traffic calming. And there will be more information on that Safe Streets Task Force to come. As I know, John Larson, the mayor, is working on that. Sounds like Jason Stevenson's in on the mix of that too. And we're also, we've heard our surveys have come back for the transportation master plan, but there's still public engagements that's going on throughout the city right now, person to person, not just online. We're revamping the transportation master plan. This is the first time in 25 years, and it's called Connect SLC. So this is our high level policy document that will guide the implementation of future projects across all modes of transportation. So it includes vehicular, public transit, pedestrian, bicycle. If you want to get familiar with that, it was really fun to hear Lynn Jacobs go on about some of the nuance and the details, but I'll put that link in there as well. A lot of things are happening with, yes.
Are you there, Tim?
Can you still hear me?
We lost you a bit, but I think you're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So that was on the transportation master plan. There's a lot going on recently with the affordable housing incentives. I know Sarah Javanorik has been going around to the other community councils talking about, from our city planning division, talking about the zoning amendments to encourage the construction of additional affordable housing. And I can put that link in the chat as well. Are there other questions? I know there was some, I can follow up. I know last month we talked about the xeriscaping and the water conservation. I put some links together that I can share. I know Megan Roy from our urban forestry subcommittee is willing and interested to work with you all if you have an interest in creating an urban forestry subcommittee to work on trees within the neighborhood. Fires getting ready to provide safety for our vulnerable wild lands with the drought. And there's information on their website pertaining to fire safety.
Great, thanks for putting that in the chat.
Okay.
Any questions for Tim? Yes, Beverly?
I don't know if it's any part of the master plan, and I know that 7th East is a state street, but is there any consideration for a pedestrian overpass across 7th East to the park, to Liberty Park?
Gotcha.
I'm just midway between 9th South.
Let me repeat that. So question from the audience about whether or not there's been a consideration for any kind of overpass, really from ELPCO over to Liberty Wells, right? Over 7th East to get access to Liberty Park. I don't know of any overpass, but I do know that there's a new Kensington Avenue byway that's going to be going across at about 15th South, 1550, right by Brick's Pizza down there. That's going to have a pretty protected bike pedestrian crossing. Lynn, do you know any, or Leah, do you know the details on that? Or could you provide some?
It's still in the works.
Please come on up. This is
yeah.
something, again.
That it's not my project, so I can't speak to the very nuanced like I did earlier. This is Will Becker is the project manager for the by the way. So if you don't know Will, good guy to get to know. We'll have to work through with UDOT what that crossing looks like, but we are starting those conversations. And
that's actually the second phase of that project. The first phase is before, from West Temple to 600 East, and then the second phase will be the 600 East to 7th. But I know Will's working on it with UDOT.
I'll share with you my professional opinion about grade separated pedestrian crossings. This is challenging because, you know, you'd like to not have pedestrians cross with cars because that's a huge risk, right? But in my experience, when we've done it, you have to be really careful about the way that you design this. A lot of times you'll see them get built and people will still walk across that grade rather than climb up the stairs, go across and climb back down. I did a study a number of years ago where we looked at that kind of crossing all over the city and all over the, you know, the greater region. And I mean, even on Bangor Highway, where there are pedestrian crossings over Bangor Highway, people are still running across that grade. Kind of blows your mind, right? But most people will. And so the only way that you really get away from that is if one of the edges of that ramp are at the elevation where people want to be. I think Trolley Square, you know, that pedestrian bridge over at Trolley Square, at the one end, you're going into the mall. So it's where people want to be. So it kind of works really well there. Or if you put some sort of physical barricade in the middle of the roadway, it keeps people from jaywalking and going across that grade. Other than that, it's really hard to make those effective. We're looking at them elsewhere in the city. There's a number of projects where we're considering doing these, but it takes a lot of sociology type perspective on how to make them work.
Well, years ago, probably 20 years ago, I live on Lake Street. I crossed in the middle of, I crossed at Yale to get here. And if the lights are both red at both ends, it's pretty safe. But before they put that island in there, I brought that up. I said, why don't you make sort of a place where you can go halfway across, kind of wait for the traffic? And I was told, no, it's a state highway, we can't do that. And I don't think, of course, nothing came of it.
Yeah.
And now you can't get up on the curb.
I was working on the S-Line crossing on 7th East, where we put the streetcar goes across 7th East to the south of here. And one of the things we did is we went out and counted how many people were actually just running across the street. There wasn't a signal there. Sugar House Barbecue used to be right there, if you guys remember. And it was shocking how many people ran across 7th East. And I mean, to me, it's scary, but
Well,
people
there's
do
so
it.
many little kids in my neighborhood, and I've asked them, do you ever go over to the park? No, we can't cross. And, you know, so
It's such a barrier.
Yeah.
it's to that.
With Kensington Byway, we look to do something there, but we still have to work through all those details with UDOT, and we're not there yet.
Okay. Thanks for providing perspective. Other questions for Tim about the mayor's initiatives? We'll be following that budget carefully. The next hearing you said is June 7th, Tim, is that right?
Correct. 7 p.m.
Great. Well, I think that wraps that up. Let me just close out, if that's okay. Trying to make myself. There we go. Feel like I'm actually giving a press conference. We've got all these cameras right here a little bit. But I just want to thank everyone for attending our meeting. We covered some great topics, figured out how we're going to get around and how we're going to sell our house a little bit. I wanted to let you know that between now and our next meeting, there's actually a lot of events that are going to be happening, including next Wednesday, the District 9 Senate debate. The Democratic primary debate is going to be at the Salt Lake Community College. It's being hosted by ELPCO and 8 other community councils. And we're going to have Derek Kitchen and Dr. Jennifer Plum, both there. The moderators are Ali Villarta from CityCast Salt Lake City and Roger McDonough from KCPW. So we've got a lot of questions there. We're going to live stream it on Zoom. It's a Zoom webinar, means no Zoom bombers, and also have a capacity for 150 people in a big multi-purpose room there off of 17th South at Salt Lake Community College. So we're appreciative of them for hosting us, and Salt Lake City Public Library for helping us with the Zoom. Also happening are the Pride Festival coming up next weekend. The Pride Parade happens on Sunday, 10 o'clock. Check out the Utah Pride Festival webpage for the details of that. And then the Utah Arts Festival is going to be June 23rd through 26th. Always a lot of fun. We're great to have that come back. Maybe you got to see the Living Traditions Festival last weekend. So we're heading into festival season, lots of great things happening. ELPCO is most likely going to meet on June 30th, which is the 5th Thursday in June. We are not quite sure on the date yet. We'll figure that out. On the agenda, we'll be having we'll have Dita Seed talk about the inland port, come and give a presentation about that. And then we're also going to be tackling the affordable housing overlay, which is a big project that Salt Lake City Council and the Planning Commission are considering. So it's going to be kind of some more, hot button important issues that we'll have on the agenda. We'll keep you informed as that agenda develops. Then we take a summer vacation and we're back in September. So we'll see you back then after that. Any questions or any other announcements from the audience?
What's
Beverly?
the Ninth Festival?
9th and 9th Festival is Saturday, September 17th. Let me see if I got that right. Yes, Saturday, September 17th at 9th and 9th. So that we're excited about. We brought that back last year and it was fun to have it. And so we're looking forward to doing it again. So, okay. Thanks for bringing that up. I got to support my own stuff here, right? Cool. Well, thank you all for coming and we'll see you in June, most likely June 30th. Okay.